everybody, this is Mrs. Lehman from Math with Mrs. Lehman. I'd like to wish you a Happy New Year. Yay! All right, these kids are hyped for 2019. Anyway. Okay, tonight on your homework, I'm sure some of you guys are watching this at home right now because you're sitting down to do your homework and you're going, I have no clue what I'm doing. So the questions that we're going to go over right now are very similar to the things that you're being asked to do on your homework. In each case, what you need to do is write an inequality to compare an unknown value, which we're going to represent with a variable, and whatever quantity they tell us in the problem. Okay, so this actually is not in your module, this is just to review. So if you want to write some of these down in the back of your module book so that you can use them as reference, that would be a great idea. Alright, so we have been working with inequalities which involve greater than, less than, and then we also have added into that less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. So a lot of kids struggle with when do I use those or equal to situations and what words are going to indicate to me that I'm going to use less than or equal to and which words indicate greater than or equal to. So some real world scenarios that you guys probably deal with, for example, is meeting a minimum age requirement maybe for a movie or for driving, for example. So in order to drive, you must be at least 16 years old. So our job is to translate this into a mathematical sentence, so to speak. So we want it to turn into an inequality. So to do that, what we're going to do is compare the age we need to be to 16. So I'm going to use A. Now the variable you pick can be relevant to the question, or if that just gives you too many options for choices, maybe it's just best you use X or N, okay, so that you don't get confused. Now my advice to you is to write the variable first and then the number after that with a space in between for our inequality symbols, okay? Some people have done it in reverse, and that's magnificent if they're getting them correct, but I think sometimes it's easier if we put the variable first so that we can kind of focus on how does this number compare to this, this age, for example. So in order to drive, you must be at least 16 years old. So what does that mean? Michael?
That anything over 16 would be great. You have to be greater than 16.
Now, could you also be 16?
Yeah.
Yes. So now we have to include 16, right? So how would we write that mathematically? What do you think, Cruz?
16 and older.
All right. So I'm looking for which symbol to use, really.
Greater than or equal to 16.
Very good. Nice collaborative effort on that. So the age has to be greater than or equal to 16. All right, so you could be 16 and drive, you could be 17, you could be 117, although I would question your ability to maneuver at that point. But anyway, does that make sense? There's no upper limit on that law, okay? But you do definitely have to be at least 16 in New York State to drive. So the next question says, to get into the movie at the discounted rate, you need to be 12 or younger. So they're going to give you a discount if you're 12 or under. So first of all, we're comparing your age now to 12, right? So what do we want to use for a variable? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Lonnie?
Greater than or less than?
No, the variable is a letter. What do we want to use for a letter?
Oh, Y.
Okay. Whatever, okay? You've got some options. I would recommend never using O, just for the mere reason that it looks like a 0, okay? But again, whatever you pick is fine. So you're comparing your age to 12, I guess, to get the discount, okay? So to get the discount, what that age needs to be less than 12, greater than 12, less than or equal to 12, or greater than or equal to 12? What do you think, Xavier?
Less than or equal to 12.
Very good. All right, so when you have an example 1, when you have a minimum, it actually is going to be a greater than or equal to sign. And when you have a maximum age, in this case 12, it's going to be a less than or equal to sign. All right, the next one, do you have a question, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, Michael has great questions, so let's see what he has to say.
So, if there's 12, why don't we put it onto y? Why? Because you have to be 12 or younger. That's why I'm confused.
We're just picking a variable, so the age has to be what? This could be, y represents anyone's age. Okay, so the age that you are comparing to when to get the discount, okay? So your age has to be, for this to be a true statement for you to get the discount, this number, y, has to be 12 or less. Okay, does that make sense? So, you know, a lot of you guys are 10 and 11, right? So some of you are 12. Is there anyone over 12 in here? Anyone 13? No? Okay. So we have, you guys would all qualify, right? Because if we plugged in your age, 11, are you less than or equal to 12?
Less than.
Yes. If you're 10, if we plug that in, are you less than or equal to 12?
Less than.
Yep, you are. If you're 12, are you less than or equal to 12? Yeah, as long as one of the two apply, then it's a true statement, okay? Maddie.
How do we find that out? I don't understand because we're just using letters.
The letter represents a number that could change. They call it a variable because it could vary or change depending on the scenario. So in this case, the age of the kid trying to get into the movies could vary, right? And it's unknown. We've used variables before when we talked about distance, rate, and time, right? We said distance equals rate times time, and our rate of speed could change, right? Like today it's pretty snowy where we are, and so that rate of speed would decrease versus a day where it's really nice and you could drive the nice legal limit. Okay, so it will depend on the problem. In this case, we're looking at that 12-year mark as our standard that we're comparing to, okay? So the next example, if you go to maybe a travel agent and they tell you the vacation will cost $1,000 at most. All right, so we're comparing our vacation cost to $1,000. So now we need to write the inequality symbol in there. What do you think, Jenna?
Greater than or equal to?
At most, it's going to cost $1,000. So actually, if your vacation is greater than $1,000, that travel agent lied to you, right?
Less
So
than or equal to.
very good.
Full of baloney.
So the vacation is less than or equal to $1,000. All right, let's look at the next one. Do you have another question, Michael?
Yeah, does the line on the bottom mean it's also equal?
Or it could be equal to. This is when we deal with upper limits or lower limits, a minimum, a maximum, an at most, or an at least. Okay? It takes some practice. We're going to practice. Your parents said you could eat 3 pieces of candy at the maximum. You better not eat more than 3 pieces. So you're comparing your candy intake. So I'm just going to pick C for candy. Comparing it to 3 pieces that your parents said you could have at most. That's a maximum. So what you eat, the candy you eat, how should that compare to 3? Leliana.
Less than or equal to.
Very good. Less than or equal to. How are we feeling about this, okay?
Good.
All right. If you have questions, please don't hesitate. I'm glad people have been asking. To get the game, you need a minimum of $65. What do you guys think? To get the game, you need $65 minimum. So are we looking for an amount of money less than or equal to 65 or greater than or equal to 65?
Greater than or equal to.
Very good. Nice job, guys. This isn't terribly difficult, but when you start throwing in the variables and you start kind of thinking like of these words we haven't used before a lot, it can get a little confusing. So hopefully this video is helping somebody at home looking at that homework assignment. Does anyone in this class right now have any questions? I think it's one of those things, it's confusing when you first learn it, but the more you practice it and get the hang of it, you'll get better, okay?
Like for 1,000, like why would you put that there instead of there? Because it's at least at most, but
If the most money you're going to spend is $1,000, so you would expect to spend less than that, right? So I think it's because that wording almost seems backwards. When you say at most, you think greater,
no,
right?
it's just because I don't. Because
You want to write it in reverse?
isn't this would be like this? I don't know.
Well, you work on how you want to ask that, okay? And I will certainly help you. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to ask. In all of these things, you'll notice kind of a trend. We've got an unknown amount, and then we've got the standard in which it's being compared, right? So we have 12 or younger, and this one we had 16 years old. In this one we had the vacation and $1,000. We had 3 pieces of candy. We could certainly eat less than that, but why would you? And then it says minimum of 65, so it could be more than that. All right, so you want to kind of pull that number out, and that's where we came up with this set of numbers, okay? And then we also are comparing that to the other, essentially part of that. So the only age isn't just 12 that can get into the movie, for example. There's a range of ages, right? But we know it has to be 12 or less. So the age has to be less than or equal to 12, for example. Okay? I'm going to pause this video. We're going to continue on with our lesson. So we are continuing with lesson 10. We started lesson 10 yesterday. Sorry for not making a video. We're continuing with that today. And here we go. So we're on exercise 5. It says Mark's favorite football team lost yards on 2 back-to-back plays. They lost 3 yards on the first play, and they lost 1 yard on the second play. Write an inequality statement using integers to compare the progress made on each play. Essentially what they want you to do is pull the numbers out of that scenario and compare them, okay? Like we just practiced. So when it says they lost 3 yards on the first play, what integer, what whole number is that asking for? Kaden?
-3.
Very good. -3 because it was a loss, right? That word right there. They lost 3 yards. All right, what would the other number be that we're talking about? Lonnie?
They lost 1 yard, meaning -1.
Very good, -1. So we can easily compare these two. -3 compared to -1. What would we write in the middle there? Rihanna?
Less than.
Very good. So -3 is less than -1. All right, the next example has to do with a young lady losing her textbooks and probably a very unhappy mother. Sierra had to pay the school for 2 textbooks that she lost. One textbook cost $55. The other cost $75. And sound effects provided by Xavier.
Yeah.
Her mother wrote 2 separate checks for each expense. I felt like I had to clarify that, otherwise they would just say, is that teacher really gassy on there today or what? All right, write 2 integers that represent the change to her mother's checking account balance. So if you are writing checks, is that going to increase or decrease your account value? People are pointing their thumbs downward and shouting out decrease. All right, so we're dealing with positive or negative numbers? Negative, very good. So we're going to deal with -55 and -75. Let's compare the two. -55 compared to -75, we would say what, Maddie? Somebody help Maddie out. Liliana.
-55 is greater than -75.
Very good. Negative 55 is further right on the number line, therefore it is greater than negative 75. We're going to look at the next question where we're asked to play teacher, so even I like to pretend from time to time. All right, we're going to correct Jason if he's wrong. Jason ordered the numbers negative 70, negative 18, and negative 18 and 5/10 from least to greatest by writing the following statement. Is this a true statement? Explain. All right, so take a look at it. Did he do that correctly?
No.
No, clearly not. So least to greatest, let's fix that. What is the lowest number there, everyone? Negative 70. Very good. Leave a space for our inequality sign. What would be next? And the largest is negative 18. Very good. If we're going from least to greatest, what symbol are we going to use between each of these? Tucker. Very good. So negative 70 is less than negative 18 and 5/10, which is less than negative 18. Very good. Now he also could have done it the opposite direction here, although he would be listing them from greatest to least. But if you were to write it that way, negative 18 is greater than negative 18 and 5/10, which is greater than negative 70. All right, we're actually going to skip around a little bit. So if you guys could turn to the next page, we're very quickly going to look at this example. One thing you'll notice, we have 3 blanks to write 3 numbers, and they're using less than signs on the top example. If they're going something is less than something is less than something else, are they going greatest to least or least to greatest? What do you guys think?
Right here is going least to greatest.
Least to greatest. Good, Xavier. So what is our lowest number here?
-1.
Very good. What's next, everyone?
Negative 1/4.
And the biggest is?
0.
Very good. So now we're going in the bottom example. Something is greater than something is greater than something else, and we have those 3 numbers to plug in. Are we going least to greatest or greatest to least, everyone?
Greatest to least.
Very good. All right, so just reverse the order. So we have 0 first, negative 1/4 still in the middle, and negative 1 is our lowest number. All right, we're not going to spend a ton of time on that. Let's go to the next page. Tomorrow, a lot of the people watching this, the kids in my class anyway, you're going to have a substitute in the morning. So I'll be around, but I won't be able to teach this to you. I'm going to have you have some practice time, at least that's the plan right now, to go ahead and write some inequalities. So let's look at the first one, and then I'll have you guys finish tomorrow in class. It says 7 feet below sea level is farther below sea level than 4.5 feet below sea level. So there's 2 numbers there to compare. What are our 2 numbers, first of all? Jenna?
7 and 4 and 1/2.
You're missing one key part. It says below sea level, so that's going to indicate
-7.
that they're negatives. Very good. So negative 7 and negative 4.5. We're going to compare those. Negative 7 compared to negative 4.5 is what? Brianna? Less than. Very good. That's lower than negative 4.5. Okay? Any questions on that? So again, this time we know the 2 different numbers, right? In the examples before, one was an unknown. But in this case, we're just pulling out the numbers in the problem. All right, this other section right here, very quickly, it says, for each of the following, use the information given by the inequality to describe the relative position to the numbers on the horizontal number line. So what that's asking you to do is to write where the one number is in relationship to the other. So essentially, you're going to say this number is to the left, or this number is to the right of whatever the other number is, okay? So we see what symbol right here? Less than, and I'm going to erase that because now it looks like a less than or equal to. So we're going to say negative 2/10 is less than negative 1/10. So where is negative 2/10 in relationship to negative 1/10? Is it to the right or is it to the left? Liliana? Very good, because it's less than, we know it's to the left. So we would write negative 2/10 is to the left of negative 1/10. All right? And they have some other examples there too. And then last night you had a pretty easy homework assignment if you didn't get lost in, trying to make it more complicated than it was, which happens sometimes when they use some of this wording. 3 integers between -4 and 0. So you don't want to use -4 and you don't want to use 0 because it's got to be between. So what would we have written there? Maddie, thank you.
-3, -2, and -1.
Very good. So you would say -3 is less than -2, which is less than -1. So that was really the only option you had because an integer is a whole number and that was a limited amount. All right, number 15 was also looking for 3 integers between 2 and -2. What did we have for options there, Cruz?
3, 2, and -2.
Did you say 3? What did you say? I couldn't hear you very well.
3, 2, and -2.
We can't use -2. What if you have a number line, right? Oops. So let's say this is 0. Oops, this is +1, 2, right? This is -1, -2. What are the integers between here and here? So you're looking at these guys right there. Okay? So -1 is less than 0 is less than 1. Now for numbers 13 and 14, you need to pick any decimal or fraction. A rational number is any number. And there are no integers between 15 and 16, so it would have to be a decimal and fraction. So for example, you could have had 15.1 is less than 15.2, which is less than 15.3.
That's exactly what I did.
Between -1 and -2, you could have said -1.9 is less than -1.8, which is less than -1.7. All right? There were actually an infinite number of answers there, as long as they were numbers that were working their way left to right on the number line. All right, I'm going to pause the video so I can pass out the homework. I'd like to thank you for watching our first video of 2019. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you. Bye-bye.